by the Iranian authorities. And since then, I have no news of him. And the fear of what has happened to him has affected my families and myself, my life. Not only anonymous people who claimed that they were agents and they told me that my father has died. They approached me and in order to kidnap me, they took me to the borders of Iran. They tried to do so. And the authorities, they claim that my father has never existed. And during the first few days of my father's detention, a mate in the detention told me that my father, as the authorities told that he has died, he was alive. This is not the whole life of my story. I'm here today in order to tell you that how the injustice and inequality has affected Iranian young woman, made her a combatant. And I have to tell you that people like me, the number of us is quite too many. And you are standing with people who have resisted quite too many. And you are standing with people who have resisted against the regime, and the obligatory hijab is one of the symbols of the injustice. And you, the international community, remembering that we have right to exist, and you have to indicate that we exist, you are cooperating with the Iranian regime. I am a woman, a mother, a protester, a freedom lover, a victim. This is the sound, the voice of 100 other eyes who have been targeted by bullets in order to stop them from protesting. I'm very lucky that I'm alive, because hundreds of other people, they died and they are not with us today. I'm very lucky today in order to be here, because I could have been detained and in prison like hundreds of others. Let me say that I am not Elahe Tawakkulian. I am Mahsa, Nika, Sarina, Kian, Minu, Majid Reza, Asra, Mehshad, Farishte, Sadaf, and Muhammad, Hamid Reza. And these names, we have heard about them. And they were names that never had the chance to be heard. Thousands of families are mourning for their beloved ones. I want to be their voice today.
از زمانی که به یاد دارم با بی‌عدالتی و خشونت حکومتی درگیر بودم.
Have involved with the injustice and the violence of the state. At 14 years of age, I was the first victimized by these laws, and after 1 year later, during the protest against the regime and the election, I was victimized again, and all my life, during my teenage life, my father was imprisoned, and while later when we received about 74 lashes, he was released. But the life of my story started since I began to deny to be a slave. I then removed the scarf on my head, and I used every little opportunity to show my hair, and my pictures were shared in the social media. Then the authorities came to me. I was taken to the moral police. I was 22 years of age. And in the same building where Mahsa Amini, the 22 years old Iranian woman, was murdered, there I was interrogated. Prior to getting to the building, as I have put the scarf on my shoulder, I made a video of myself and I shared it in the social media, and I announced that I am not scared of detention and threats, and I will say no to the regime. And my father also was not silent, and he was beaten in front of me. Both of us were detained, and then he was condemned to receive 74 lashes, and I was sentenced to detention. And the judge told me, it is a law. I wanted just to and in doctorate I was going for the entrance exam. However, I was deprived from continuation of my education. I was then sacked from my job, and I was deprived from receiving my documents, certificates from the university, and so deprived from social life. We have gathered here for the honoring the human rights, honoring the freedom principles. I'm coming from a country who has a long background of civilization, Iran. Maybe you have heard about Kurush, and he has established 2,500 years ago a new set of legislation, and now look where we are. The authorities, the regime in Iran, which has animosity with our background, and they are violating the human rights. They kill people. Republic Islamic Babylon kill people. Islamic regime like Favorom knows himself as the representative of the God on the earth, and use all our wealth in order to make more prisons and make more advanced arms. Hundreds of people, they lost their eye, and I would like to ask you to have a look to the reports from explaining the violence of Iranian authorities, and look how many people they lost their beloved one. And Kian Pir Falak body was put in the ice, and who is now beyond the bars, like too much Salehi, Nrgس, محمدی, and hundreds of other people. The Islamic regime says that the protesters are forming just a little percentage of the society. I give you an example. Imagine that in your country 10 of celebrities, sportsmen, singers, workers, they are detained, and then you are said that all of them are guilty. Do you believe such a claim? Today, all of Iranians are under pressure, and if they protest even a little, they are getting destroyed. For 2 years, I was arrested 5 times. And in the very last case, for protesting against the hijab, I was sentenced to 6 years and banning from leaving the country. And I was deprived from continuing my education in university. They put pressure on me in order to give up and become a slave. However, I had no other way rather than struggling and fighting. And I was 23 years when I was involuntarily exiled, and for the last time as the officers, they shot at me on the border, I look at my country on the top of a mountain. At that moment, I promised to myself that I struggle, I fight for all other people who were exiled until our country becomes safe, and being a woman is not a crime, and no one could be put behind the bars because of their ideas, and they don't get death sentence. And today, as my father is a victim of the disappearance, I have no doubt that I have to fight for a life, a normal life. What has been stolen from my people, I have to fight.
I was a protester, and I came to the fore. But they shot me in my eyes within minutes. Please, I urge you to listen to my voice, to the voice of us protesters. It's very important for me and for all Iranian people, their fight for freedom. We need your support. We need your support to carry on our slogan of women, life, freedom. The Islamic Republic continues to cut us off from the world by blocking internet. Please remember the shooting down of the Ukrainian plane by the Iranian regime, how they raided the Iranian students' hostel, and dozens of students were killed. Please know that we Iranian people have gone through all the legal channels available to us to realize our rights, but in vain. Sadly, because the nature of this regime is to be against women, against freedom, against democracy, by awarding this very courageous woman, Nrgis محمدی, with a Nobel Peace Prize. You have given the Iranian people in guarantee some kind of security for our political prisoners. So, and it's important for you to pay attention to Iran so that the Iranian regime authorities know that they are not going to isolate our people, that you're watching their every move to make sure that they're not continuing their suppression of people. Look, woman, life, freedom is not just a slogan, it's our roadmap. And what is our weapon? Our weapon of the Iranian women is their hair. By removing their hijab, they are standing up to the Iranian military, to the Iranian authority. We want to be Iranian people to live in democracy, in freedom. And I urge you to please, by respecting your own values, at least understand that we need you, that the world is a global village. We need each other, and we need your support to realize our rights and our freedoms. Thank you very much. Don't be afraid. At least you, countries that champion human rights and freedom, please, don't be afraid. Go to Iran. A few days ago, Sima Mourad Beghi, who had lost her arm in the protest, met with German leaders. But they kept their meeting behind closed doors. Why? Because they don't want to jeopardize the relationship with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Look at the region, how the Iranian regime is sending forces to Palestine, to elsewhere in the region, how they're selling drones to the Russians, with which they are killing innocent Ukrainians. Don't be afraid in the West. Please stand up for us. And there are groups that defend the Islamic Republic of Iran regime, unfortunately. But please stand by us, not by those groups to defend the Islamic Republic of Iran. We need you. We need you. I used to be a normal citizen who could not bear it anymore, could not bear the situation in Iran. Now that I'm in the West, I feel I have this responsibility to try and stand up for my people, not to remain silent. I know that every time I the Islamic Republic of Iran is watching every word I say, and there are more and more legal cases against me in Iran. But I am standing up for the voices of the Iranian people. long live freedom, long live the freedom-seeking men and women of Iran.
زن، زندگی، آزادی. زن، زندگی، آزادی. آزادی، زن، آزادی. ممنونم.
A powerful message from two Iranian women's rights activists, Shima Babai, currently in exile in Belgium, and Elaya Tavakolian in exile in Italy. Zan Zendegi Yazadi, the resonating chant of women life freedom echoed strongly yesterday in the City Hall of Oslo as Kiana and Ali delivered a strong speech penned by their mother Nrgis محمدی, who is behind the walls in the Evin prison. And she also sends us a strong message of hope when she says the Iranian people will dismantle obstruction and despotism through their persistence. Have no doubt. This is certain. That's the words from Nrgis. And she adds, I'm confident that the light of freedom and justice will shine brightly on the land of Iran. At that moment, we will celebrate the victory of democracy and human rights. Today, we find ourselves in the Aula room at the University of Oslo, adorned with the masterpieces of Edvard Munch, notably his depiction of the sun. Munch aimed to convey both a sense of the specifically Norwegian and the universally human with the idea of enlightenment. And this serves as a starting point for our discussion today, burning for democracy. The blazing sun behind me, casting its rays in all directions, symbolizes hope. And in front of the sun today, the stage is adorned with street art from Iranian artists. Il stencil and mad stencil, highlighting that protests in Iran also involve using art to challenge the system. Welcome to the Nobel Peace Prize Forum 2023 here in the University Aula in Oslo. Also a warm welcome to those of you following us via social media platforms and various TV stations worldwide. I'm Erik Osheim, and it's my pleasure to moderate this year's Nobel Peace Prize Forum. First of all, I'm delighted to introduce the director at the Norwegian Nobel Institute, Olav Njølstad.
Thank you, Erik. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this Nobel Peace Prize Forum 2023. Hosted in cooperation with the University of Oslo and with financial support from the City of Oslo and the Forum for International Understanding, London. We thank our partners for their invaluable support. As you know, the topic of this year's forum is the struggle for democracy and freedom in Iran, with a particular focus on the plight and the rights of women. Since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, the theocratic regime has posed a constant threat to the well-being of the people of Iran, as well as to regional peace and security. Sorry. The aim of this year's forum is to explore the situation which Iranian women are facing in their daily lives and to put their struggle into a broader regional and human rights context. It is our tradition always to invite a former Nobel Peace Prize laureate to the forum. This year, we are honored by the presence of two former laureates. One is the Iranian lawyer and human rights activist, Dr. Mahdi, who received the Nobel Peace Prize 20 years ago in 2003. You will be meeting her shortly. First, however, I am proud to introduce the other former Nobel Peace Prize laureate present here today, Amnesty International, which was awarded the prize in 1977. Since 2021, Amnesty International has been headed by Secretary General Agnès Calamard, the highly esteemed French political scientist and human rights expert. Before taking on her current position, Ms. Calamard was the UN Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial, summary, or arbitrary executions. In that capacity, she led the UN inquiry into the assassination of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. In her keynote this morning, she will, among other things, share with us some of the findings from a recently published Amnesty International report on how Iranian police and security forces systematically have committed rape, gang rape, and other sexual violence against peaceful protesters, including children. Please welcome Ms. Calamard.
Good morning. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. After yesterday's ceremony honoring and celebrating formidable human rights defender Nrgis Mohammadi, and as the world marks the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But it pains me greatly that Nrgis is not here herself to receive the prize she deserves, to be here with her husband, her children, her brother, her friends, her community. I am outraged that instead she remains behind bars, facing ill treatment and possibly torture. At Amnesty International, we will not rest until the Iranian authorities release her unconditionally and all other activists and human rights defenders who are unlawfully detained. These authorities release her unconditionally and all other activists and human rights defenders who are unlawfully detained. Despite so many years of unimaginable cruelties inflicted to silence her, Nrgis Mohammadi's courageous demands for justice transcend prison walls and are here with us today. We must stand with her and all other human rights defenders, activists in Iran, not just through words of solidarity, but also through action. And we've heard already about the call for action. The international community has a vital role in ensuring justice for the far too many victims of human rights violations in Iran. But I am here today to report to you on some of the most darkest forms of repression imposed on the people of Iran right now. You all know that on 16th of September 2022, the death in custody of Mahsa Amini sparked an unprecedented popular uprising. She had been arrested a few days earlier by the so-called morality police for not complying with the country's abusive compulsory veiling laws for women and girls. Hundreds of thousands of women, men, school children, university students poured into the street across the country in mass nationwide protest, really inspiring many of us around the world, inspiring me personally. They displayed a bold determination to defy an unpopular establishment, theocratic establishment, steeped in impunity, discrimination, and oppression. And they fought for Iran's transition to a system respecting equality, human rights, and democracy. Women and girls were at the forefront of this popular uprising, challenging decades of gender-based discrimination and violence. They defied the compulsory veiling law, which had subjected them for decades to daily harassment, violence, and led to their arbitrary detention, torture, and ill treatment. Denial to access to education, employment, public space, treated as second-class citizen. The slogan, "Woman, Life, Freedom," quickly became the symbol and message of the uprising. It was chanted by countless protesters, including school girls, elementary children. It was written on the walls across the country and beyond the country. I participated to marches, for instance, on Women's Day and on Human Rights Day in Mexico. And we all chanted, all of us chanted in Mexico, woman, life, freedom. The images of women courageously burning their headquarters, their headscarves. You can burn headquarters too if you want. But and appearing in protest unveiled resonated nationally and globally. Protested, expressed demand for the dissolution of the Islamic Republic system and its replacement with a secular democratic system respecting human rights. How did the authorities respond? Well, as we know, they responded by unleashing what we described at Amnesty as a brutal, militarized crackdown to crush the spirit of resistance, to deter protesters from further gathering, to humiliate them, to punish them for standing up against the Islamic Republic system. The crackdown involved the extensive use of unlawful force, killings, resulting in hundreds of deaths, thousands of injuries, mass arrest, tens of thousands of people by the Iranian authorities' own admission. Those arrested were routinely subjected to torture, and we owe it to Nrgis محمدی, who was among the first to bravely raise the alarm about the use of sexual violence against the detainees after the uprising began. We have carried comprehensive investigation into the commission of rape and sexual violence during the uprising and issued a report last week. We found that the Iranian authorities committed rape, gang rape, and other sexual violence against protesters, including children as young as 12. These were not incidents by rogue elements, the authority may try to argue, or not. All security forces participated everywhere in the country. Agents from the Revolutionary Guard, the paramilitary Basij force, the Ministry of Intelligence, different branches of the police force. Rape and sexual violence were used against women, men, girls, boys, constituted a key weapon in the Iranian authority armory of repression of the protest and suppression of dissent. I'm here speaking on behalf of my colleagues at Amnesty International, and I want to pay credit for them, because from January last year, they relentlessly conducted this investigation and heard the most agonizing testimony after testimony about the rape. I hesitated for a long time. I thought, who am I to speak about what happened in front of a large audience made up of Iranian people. So I thought maybe what I could do is, give you some of the testimonies. I tried to find the ones that were not as gruesome as what you may read in the report, because what was committed on the bodies of the protesters, some of them really young, kids, full of energy and spirit for life, coming into the street. And then they were caught. So let me read from Mariam. I've censored her a bit for the purpose of this audience. My friends and I removed our veils in public, and we were chanting. The thought never crossed my mind that the security forces would arrest us. But they did. They caught us. They called us vulgar words. They mocked. They ridiculed us. They slapped us. They punched and kicked us in our genitals and our breast. I tried to hold into my friend's hand because I was so terrified. But they kicked me so violently I had to let her go. And then they threw me into a solitary confinement cell. And they interrogated me until the middle of the night. They started ripping my clothes. I was screaming, begging them to stop, apologizing for what I had done. But they kept going. In response to my pleadings, they punched me hard in my mouth, and my mouth got filled with blood. There were 3 of them, including the interrogator. I remember 2 of them raping me. I was so small compared to them. They raped me in every possible way. After that, I lost consciousness. And I regained it when they threw water on my head and shouted to others, "Come and take the filthy slut." Kept me in solitary confinement for weeks. They gave me no medical care for my injuries, not even a tissue. No doctor ever came to see me. I suffered from bleeding and infection, and I had to use part of my torn clothes for the bleeding. We heard dozens of testimonies like that one. From men, from women, from children as young as 12. They were held alongside adults in cruel and inhuman conditions. Women and girls were held in detention centers run by all-male security forces, exposing them to heightened risk of rape and other forms of sexual violence. And months after their horrific ordeals, all of them have continued to deal with deep psychological and physical trauma. The mother of a school boy who was raped, he was 12, told Amnesty International that her son attempted suicide twice. Sahar, one of the survivors, told us, "I used to be a fighter in life. Even when the Islamic Republic tried to break me down, I carried on." However, recently, I think about suicide a lot. I am a person who waits all day long for nighttime so I can sleep. So that's the purpose of rape and sexual violence, to break down the women, the girls, to break down their families, to break down their communities, to humiliate, to deter, to repress, to impose the most gruesome pain. And then followed systemic impunity. Not a single state official has been criminally investigated, let alone tried and punished for sexual violence, even when a few courageous survivors dared to complain. Instead, consistent with their appalling, long-standing record, prosecutorial authorities have actively contributed to the state machinery of torture. They dismissed and covered up the complaint of survivors coerced into giving false confession because of torture, because of rape. Prosecutors and judges have used those confessions to bring more charges against survivors, and some of them have even been sentenced to death. One of them, at least, was executed, and we're very worried about many others. Victims have been left with no recourse, no redress, only institutionalized impunity, silencing, and multiple physical and psychological scars running deep and far. Today, Iran remains in the throes of a protracted and deep-rooted human rights and impunity crisis. In a desperate attempt to prevent any more challenge to their iron grip on power, in the years since the uprising, the authorities have intensified their crackdown on human rights defenders, activists, students, journalists, and all those seeking truth and justice. They have doubled down on their all-out assault on women and who chose not to wear the compulsory headscarf in public. Morality policing is back, placing over 40 million women and girls under surveillance. Countless women have been suspended or expelled from universities, barred from sitting final exams, denied access to banking services, public transport. Others have been prosecuted, sentenced to imprisonment, degrading punishment. And today's massive crackdown is intensified by mass surveillance technology. In a 2-month period, from April to June 2023, Iran's police sent almost 1 million SMS messages to women driving without a veil. They were captured through artificial intelligence and received those very threatening messages. Some of them had their cars removed from them altogether. That's Big Brother on a scale unheard of. This is taking place amid a spate of hateful official statements referring to unveiling as a virus, a social illness, disorder. Prosecution authorities have repeatedly and shamefully tried to condition Nrgis Mohammadi's access to adequate health care on her complying with Iran's abusive and degrading compulsory veiling laws. As a result, her access to treatment for serious lung and heart conditions has been delayed or denied. There is absolutely no prospect for justice domestically. This is what we heard. This is what Amnesty International findings have shown over and over again. This is why we need the international community. This is why we need states in Europe, in particular because we have universal jurisdiction, legal provision. We urge them to initiate criminal investigation against suspected perpetrators under the principle of universal jurisdiction, with a view to issuing international arrest warrant. We demand that states support the extension of the mandate of the UN fact-finding mission on Iran to ensure that the independent mechanism continues to collect, preserve, analyze evidence of crimes under international law, so that sometimes in the near future, justice can be delivered. Now, I would like to play for you a video clip.
Last year, during the Woman Life Freedom Uprising in Iran, hundreds of thousands of women, men, and children bravely protested against decades of inequality and oppression. In a new investigation, Amnesty International reveals that security forces tortured protesters through rape and other sexual violence in detention.
Since December 2017. So silence is not an option. Muted, timid international response to the Iranian government's crimes will only embolden them further. On the occasion of Nobel Peace Prize 2023, to Nrgis Mohammadi, on the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the UDHR, I wish to call on us all to stand and act for all the women, men, youth, children of Iran, and to say that silence is not an option. 1948 gifted us the UDHR, showing how, in the face of even the worst that human beings can do to each other, a vision for justice and humanity is possible. Nurgis Mohammadi is telling us that we have a responsibility to keep fighting for justice and humanity is possible. Nurgis Mohammadi is telling us that we have a responsibility to keep fighting for it in spite of everything we're watching, witnessing, being made sometimes complicit to around the world. In spite of the violence in Iran, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Sudan, we must keep fighting. We must keep fighting against the darkness forced upon us by tyranny, violence, wars, and fear. The darkness forced upon us by indifference, double standard, aggression, and repression. So on the occasion of the UDHR 75th anniversary, I urge us all to resist. Resist the globalized, the localized, the national attacks against rights everywhere, beginning with Iran. I call on us all to transform and to reshape the laws, the policies, the system that repress dissent, repress the people of Iran and beyond Iran. I call on all of us to disrupt the system of oppression and repression in Iran and beyond Iran, to disrupt the system around the world that violate rights and silence defenders the world over, the system of repression that ignores the cries for help and the thousands of people killed because of their ethnicity, race, and religion. In our complete indifference, we must disrupt our indifference, our lack of courage, and our silence. We must disrupt the normalization of repression and oppression. We must disrupt the lack of courage and the too many voices that says nothing can be done. Everything can be done when we come together. We must disrupt the building of a world order that leaves far too many people falling off the abyss. We must be a 1948 generation for the 2048 generation. We must all be worthy of Nurgis Mohammadi. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes Kalimar, for this extremely strong message. We have to break the silence. We will discuss that also when we continue with this Nobel Peace Prize Forum. We will change a little bit the theme. Wise, funny, and heartbreaking. That's how the New York Times described Persepolis. Marianne Satrapi's acclaimed graphic memoir of growing up in Iran during the Islamic Revolution, the animated feature film version of Persepolis, was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in 2007. Let's have a look.
Parce qu'on m'a dit, si tu retournes, je sais pas, ceci et cela vont arriver. Mes liens sont toujours et resteraient toujours des liens très très profonds. Nous
sommes en train de vivre un moment historique.
Les chers partis. Au lit, tout de suite.
Mage, ce n'est pas un comportement digne d'une future prophète.
Mais mon Dieu,